Welcome to the Call Dad podcast with your host, Call Dad CEO and visionary Matt Stewart. And this week's guest, Call Dad's Chief Operating Officer and Integrator, Matt Stewart.
All right, so I got to say, for what it's worth, Todd was unbelievably excited and proud of the fact that he beat you on the first one, which, I don't know, he talked about that for at least 15 minutes, by the way.
Well, he should have. I'm sure he did a great job.
I told him it was tenure-based, okay? So...
Makes sense.
So he's got that going for us. All right, look, well... you and I just had, I would say, an extremely exciting week last week. Mm-hmm. We were at the Carrier Southeast. Well, first, actually, before I even get in that, who are you? What do you do? What's your position?
I'm Matt Stewart. I am Integrator and Chief Operating Officer at Call Dad. And in a nutshell, I do whatever you tell me to do.
All right, sweet. Glad we got that out of the way. Todd and I talked a lot about yes, sir, and adherence. Yep. So good. So last week, CE Southeast Conference. It was probably big. At least it was monumental for me. It seems like it might have been for you as well. Well, why don't you go? Why don't you tell what happened or what took place?
Well, Friday evening, when we were wrapping everything up, they had the award ceremony. And I had a feeling something was going to happen. They made some comments, some of the higher-ups at CE. And they wanted me to sit really close to the front. And I knew something was up, but I didn't know what. And if you've ever gone to these things before, they hand out awards based on different criteria, things like sales thresholds or type of sales and things like that. And usually you win one, maybe two awards, which is what I was anticipating. I wasn't anticipating what we got. We ended up getting 4 awards. We cleaned up. Call Dad was Daddy took them all home. We won. The biggest one was we won Dealer of the Year for all of CE Southeast. So that includes North and South Carolina. In addition to that, we won top ductless sales. So our ductless sales, our MURA and those products, we were number 1 in the CE Southeast region. We also had the highest growth as a percentage in the entire CE Southeast. And we also won the Platinum Sales Award, which is the highest award that they give as far as volume, sales volume, which is over $3 million in products purchased from them. So yeah, never have had something like that before. It was very exciting.
And sorry if you said this. Did you say the presidents as well?
Oh no, I forgot the president. I know. Yeah.
That one didn't come with a plaque.
That one did not come with a plaque, so I don't give that any credit.
Count.
But no, yeah, President's Award, which is what I've been told the most prestigious award that Carrier gives out as a manufacturer.
Yeah.
So that was we had 5 separate awards. We only got 4 plaques.
Yeah.
They were being a little
stingy.
Stingy on the fifth plaque. So.
Yeah. You know, that manufacturing, the goods are expensive right now. So
inflation.
Yeah. No plaque for you. So, you know, I shared this with you, but I think the first dealer conference that I went to, I will not mention the name of the dealer, was, I believe it was like right before COVID. It was like January of 2020. So had the business for 3 years, had never seen a trade show from a dealer perspective. And I didn't even know what was going on. And who we were with at the time, it was somewhat awkward because the first hour of it was them just giving themselves awards. Yeah. And it was like, well, what about the people that help get you all jobs?
Gave you the money.
So it's like they make all the dealers just sit there and watch them give each other awards. And then finally they got to the dealer side. And after it, I remember being like, I think I went to our rep at the time and said, give me 3 years and we will be your top dealer on that stage. Now, obviously we know where things went, but that was a personal challenge for me that I was like, I want to get to that dealer level, whatever the top sales metric is, whatever it is, like I'm going to get there. Like, and I don't think it was much like from a competitive stand. It was probably competitive. 100%.
Well, I think it's validation. I think it's a little bit of validation that what we're doing something right. We're moving in the right direction as an organization. And we're getting the recognition from people outside the organization that are noticing, hey, something's going on with these guys that is different.
Yeah.
You know, we had a lot of people come up to us talking about our brand and the branding and just how much most of them told us how much they enjoyed it and how much they appreciated the cleverness of it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was nice in that sense. And we have a really good team.
Yeah.
We have a good team behind us that can help us get to that point.
Yeah, there's no way back then that we were ready for achieving what I wanted to achieve. No. And it is not taken I want to say a lack of effort to the entire team, because they did it. I didn't do it, right? Putting the right people in the right seats and everybody willing to put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears out there to do that, to accomplish that mission, really made me proud. And it was fitting because I didn't even get to enjoy it myself, because I had to leave. I said that you could not have scripted this better over 6 years of being in the industry to finally get that award. And I needed to go to a father-daughter dance, which is probably more on brand than anything else. And when I had that conversation with my wife about, well, I'm going to miss the dealer awards this year.
Well, you were there. I FaceTimed you. They worked with us, and I got to FaceTime you. And you couldn't hear anything, but you could still semi be a part of it, which was kind of cool.
That was awesome.
That just means we got to win it next year. Is all it means.
We got to
win it next
down.
year, and we'll have the daddy daughter dance at the CE dealer meeting.
And we got to get more of the team there, too.
Absolutely.
So I think allowing everybody to share in that will be meaningful.
In honor of all the HVAC contractors out there, what is an air conditioner's favorite type of music? Cool jazz.
Of Matt up there telling a dad joke in front of everybody. Because I think that's awesome. And then you could see me on the iPhone. But yeah, no, that was unbelievably special to me personally. From just a growth challenge perspective. And like I said, from the team perspective, we would have never been able to do that without the hard work and dedication that everyone put into that. So huge thank you to all of you. Appreciate that. And it's yours way more than it is mine. So enjoy it as well, because that's a special award. All four of them are maybe not the Duckless one.
No one cares about Duckless.
But the rest of them are pretty important. All right, so Duckless and cheese jokes aside, I know I've heard this story. You and I have talked to well before you even came here, your story. I feel like most people here have heard you at least give some synopsis of it that you do during interviews or that you do during, Dad U apprenticeships, whatever it may be, have heard snippets of it. Do you mind sharing again for everybody? Just go through how you ended up in the trades.
Well, I was born into it. Yeah, I was born into it. Yeah, I was born. That was how I got into the trades. It started back in the 50s when my granddad decided he had to make a living to pay for his 7 children. And he decided to get into the heating and air industry. And he did that for probably close to 40 years. He did that. And then my dad got into it as soon as he could right out of high school. And so he did that for, the whole time I was growing up.
Yeah.
And one of my first memories, I don't know if I even told you this story. One of my first memories is going with him. I was probably preschool age, and going with him on an oil furnace service call. He worked at an oil company at that time. And go down to I remember it like it was yesterday. Now, in my head, it was significantly bigger than it probably was. When you're 4 years old, everything is huge. But in my head, we walked down in this basement, and the homeowner had hit the reset button. If you know much about oil, the homeowners go down, they hit the little red button to reset it. And you're supposed to hit it once, twice. A lot of times what homeowners do, if it doesn't work, they just hit it over and over and over again. So it puts a lot of fuel in the burner.
Yeah.
So what happens is once it does light,
It's
it
flooded.
blows. Yeah. Yeah. And in my head, in reality, it probably wasn't that dangerous. In my head, I had to like walk through fire and flame, crawl my way up through the basement door. I'm sure it wasn't that dramatic, but that is one of my first memories is my dad working on an oil furnace. I remember one time I was with him on an oil furnace and I touched the flue pipe, single wall pipe. Not a good idea. Burnt myself pretty good that time, but I saw my dad do it, so I thought, I guess I got to touch this thing. And not a good idea. So yeah, I mean, growing up,
you saw your dad do it, and to show you don't do it,
no,
or show you how tough he was.
I think no. What had happened was he would check flue temperature, and he would see if it was warming up, and he probably would do it in the beginning. We know when it's just started,
is there actual
smart
warm air?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm an idiot, and I'm just like, it's probably been running for 10 minutes, and I just touch it, and burn myself pretty good. So I mean, I grew up in the industry. When I got to high school, I was not necessarily wanting to be in heating and air at the time. I thought, I'm going to go into college. I was really interested in industrial engineering. So I had looked at going to NC State and all this kind of stuff. And my dad said, listen, come work. And at that point, he had a business in Hickory. He said, come work in this business for a year. And if you don't like it, I'll pay for you to go to college. And I thought, well, that's a free ride it's a win-win for me. And I got into it, and what I realized is that I was doing a lot of that same stuff in a different way, but I was still doing a lot of that stuff, process improvement. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was attempting to do that. So I got really into the business side. So I started learning the behind the scenes, and I did install in high school, and even as soon as I got out of high school, I'll do some installs on and off. I started doing a lot of sales, started doing in-home sales, and if you do install and you do sales, that's obviously a huge chunk of the field work. Yeah. And then I kind of managed the install and sales department. That business in Hickory, my parents sold in 2014. And I went to Maryland, and I started working at the company my dad bought up in Maryland, and did that from 2014 and then to 2020. And I know we're going to get into this, but of course met you in 2017. Yeah. And it just felt like it was time, for me to get back to North Carolina in a nutshell. We can go more into that if we want, but decided to get back or come back to North Carolina. And that's kind of what brought me to Call Dad and where I am today.
Yeah. So where were you when we met? You were still in Maryland.
Still in Maryland. We'd been there for...
I know we met in Hickory. And we don't have to get into circumstances of what your dad was dealing with and, some of those transactions that he was attempting to clean up, which was unfortunate. Yeah. But I know we met in Hickory, but what was going through your head at that point? Were you thinking of getting back to North Carolina at that point? Or?
No, not necessarily. Well, maybe eventually, yes. Yeah. Because, my original thought process was that we would grow that business in Maryland and sell that business. And then I would move back to North Carolina. Yeah. Your dollar goes a little bit further in North Carolina than it does in Maryland. Yep. And also the weather's a little bit nicer, and my wife's family's all still down here. So
people are way better.
Well, that's absolutely
anywhere
great point.
Other than Maryland, people are better. My wife's from Maryland. I don't know if anyone knows that. So I like to have fun with that.
So yeah, I would say when we first met in 2017, it wasn't like I was thinking this, plan of I'm going to go back to North Carolina and work at that time Sky in Charlotte. It wasn't necessarily that, but what I was intrigued about was you as a person, and just to the fact that you came at this from a different angle. My dad came from it from a heating and air guy's angle, and he did a great job teaching me what he knew, but he could only teach me what he knew. And having the opportunity to learn from somebody with a different background and maybe different perspective was something that I thought would stretch me and grow me as a person. So I think just meeting, and we're close to the same age. We both have 3 kids. We both got married the same year. There's just a lot with the same name. There's a lot of similarities there. And I think it just intrigued me. And you and I, of course, just stayed in touch for 3 years on and off.
Which I think, I don't even think we talked about an opportunity of you coming down here for the first 2 years, was it?
No,
I mean, we mostly just talk shop.
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes you would have questions and like, hey, do you have anything like this? And maybe I would send or vice versa. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily from the perspective of, hey, I want a job. It was more from just talking. Yeah.
And back then I was really stuck on the, I thought leasing was going to change this industry.
I thought you were going to say it.
You're
not going to say it, are you?
You want me to say it?
Absolutely got to.
Yeah, it was air as a service.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, if anyone knows or has ever heard of the software sector, they use software as a service and they call it SaaS. So I was like, we're going to do air as a service. Ass.
That was it. That was what intrigued me. I thought, listen, as soon as he brought up ass, I am going to be in. I'm coming there. I got to be a part of this.
Whitney, you will not believe this guy down in North Carolina wants to sell ass. Can't imagine that conversation. We need to move now. Get in before it's too late. Oh, gosh. Anyway, we could chat about that model, but I think there's a few. I'm not saying that it's not working. I think that there's just a lot of companies that haven't maybe figured it out yet, or that ultimately the business model doesn't make the most amount of sense to go out and repo HVAC units. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was a lot of, at least my exploratory of like, how do you learning the industry from someone else's perspective. But yeah, so it was probably like 6 months before that you mentioned something about like, I'm potentially considering moving back to North Carolina.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think it was probably 4 months, three or 4 months. Yeah. From a time, that's when I felt like, maybe this is the right time, and reached out to you. And I remember talking to Whitney, my wife, and I said, I don't know if this is going to work out, but if it's supposed to be, it's going to be. And if it's not, it's not like it was end of the world, but I'm glad it did. Yeah. It's been a fun ride since March of 2020, not April of 2020. It's March of 2020.
I should have. I knew your personality. I feel like because we knew each other for a few years at that point. But like the second that we said, "All right, let's do this," and we agreed, like, let's make this happen. You were like, "The house is sold. I'll be there on Tuesday." Meanwhile, the news of February, early March 2020, the world was effectively grinding to a halt. Yep. And your joke there of me always saying April was because I just blacked out as a business owner, just completely blacked out March of 2020. Like it's a blip that doesn't exist on my like historical timeline anymore.
Our onboarding process wasn't as refined as it is now. Hey, Matt, you just walked right into your office, shut the door.
You hear my head banging against the desk all day. What's that sound? Does he do this all the time? No, that was some fun times. Probably one of the best onboardings I ever did. Don't touch anything. I'll talk to you next week.
Work from home. I'll see you in a month.
Wear mask.
Exactly.
So, all right. So getting on that, outside of that perspective, what was your perspective when you got, I think I mean, I tried, I don't want to say warn you. That's maybe not the right term, but I tried to give you at least a good perspective of what you were walking into.
Sure.
Did you feel like that, or what was Sky when you got there?
Very different than it is now. Very different. It was primarily new construction, even at that time. The business model and the business itself kind of catered more to the new construction side. And my background is no new construction. Yeah. I'm terrible at new construction. Don't ask me to do new construction.
I think 19, sorry to interrupt, I think 19 was the first year, if I recall, that we just like evened out. Maybe there was a little bit more service and install than construction, but it was still a lot of new construction.
Yep. So it was very different than what I was used to. When you come into a situation like that, you have an opportunity to learn. things to do. Maybe somebody's doing something different, a way that you can learn, and maybe sometimes things that you shouldn't do. You know, that doesn't work, and let's not do it that way. So I think it gave me an opportunity to learn. But I think my initial thought process, the thing that really jumped out at me was I knew I could have an immediate impact on the installation and as far as the add-on replacement side. Yeah. And then I know I could add value there, and I could add value on the service side. So we put a bunch of things in place, within a few months of me getting here. Even how we handle our on call and after hours, that was changed within probably 3 or 4 months. So I just knew there was an opportunity to make improvements, and I love a challenge. I enjoy being challenged. So I think I was excited because I got to come in and make some improvements and make the organization better.
Yeah. You were always what I would say is a bulldog or maybe a cheetah. I don't know what the proper term of speed and willingness and aggression to immediately make change.
Yes.
How did you respond, or what was your perspective when I would push back? Not in the sense of like, no, we're not going to do this, but hey, we've got a million things that we need to change, and this is more of a marathon than it is a race.
I'd like to.
Was it hard for you?
Well, yes, because my personality is. I mean, we got to tell that one story, right? Yeah. I mean, soon after I joined, we had like a technology area within the organization. I didn't know what all the stuff was, but I had to move it. So I just started unplugging stuff and moved it and tried to plug it back. And I just remember one time you came in, you're like, yeah, that's not what you think it is. That's not where those wires go. I figured we'd figure that out eventually.
There's a hole. Plugging something in.
So I think it's against my nature, but I tried to the best of my ability to understand that maybe I can learn something from the approach and maybe learn something from the situation. So I like to think and hope that I handled it well, but naturally it's not something that I like to do. I like to make decisions extremely fast and move on to the next one.
Yeah. And it's a weird dynamic, like thinking about this as the organization of a whole. There's a lot of times where we feel like we're making changes too fast, and probably more times where we feel like we can't make them fast enough. And then probably from like the tech's perspective or the apprentice perspective, there's times where they're like, whoa, you guys are changing too much. And then there's also these perspectives where we hear like, why are you taking so long to change this or fix this or correct this? And it's a constant dichotomy of living between going too fast and too slow. And there's never like the porridge is just right opportunities, or it's hard to find that medium. We have been through a material amount of change, not only since the beginning of Sky, but since you got here. But before we get into some of that, I've heard this question a lot. You and I are big proponents of EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. I've spoken about it a few times, but you are the quote unquote integrator.
Yep.
What the heck is that? What does that mean? And why should people care about that?
So if you look at EOS and you read the book Traction, the business, the organizational structure at the very top of the organization is you have your visionary. And normally the visionary is the owner. It doesn't have to be, but normally the visionary is the owner. And their job as a visionary is to create a vision for the organization and make sure that the organization has the ability to accomplish those goals. And then underneath the visionary is the integrator. And the integrator's job is to implement that vision that the owner sets. So once the owner sets, in our situation, the owner, but whoever that the visionary is, once they set that vision, an integrator's job is to work with the other department heads to make sure that that vision is accomplished. So when I say I do whatever you tell me to do, in a way it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's also true because we have to communicate on a very regular basis. We probably talk almost definitely Monday through Friday every day, probably multiple times every day, trying to, and on weekends as well. We still, not as much on weekends, but we definitely do it, especially when there's something that needs to be addressed.
I want to call you more often than I do.
Yeah. So
I try to be good. I'll just call you with like, I've got this dumb idea here. You're like, okay.
So my responsibility is to interpret your vision, which sometimes is easier than others, and make sure that I give that vision to the team and we implement that vision. That's ultimately what my responsibility is.
Yeah. And part of that complication is probably better articulated as managing my manic personality in whatever whim I'm on in terms of, what we need to improve, where we need to go, and how we need to do it.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best examples of that would be the rebrand in and of itself, and flipping the whole business on its head. Obviously, you and I are extremely close. As you said, we talk all the time. So you saw me going through what the whole company has seen, or seen the recording of, why we did it, how we got there, my perspective, and how I arrived at that ultimate decision. But what were you thinking? Was it more of a, holy crap, this is going to be a lot of work? Was it this is going to be disruptive? Was it, this guy is crazy? Where was your mindset as you saw me go through that whole hierarchy and shift?
I think you talked about it at the brand reveal, but I think you did. But what people don't know is that this was going on a lot longer than, it wasn't a 2-month deal.
Yeah.
This was probably 4 to 6 months, really.
Yeah.
And people won't understand this unless they were involved and they were in it, but you were just unhappy. And you weren't unhappy necessarily with the company per se. You as the visionary, you felt like the vision of the organization at that moment wasn't going to get where you ultimately wanted to get it to be.
Yeah.
And you couldn't necessarily articulate that.
Yeah, sorry, but like, did you feel that as well? Like, did you ever have the moment of like, I don't know how this guy expects me to achieve some of this given the structure that I'm in?
No, I can honestly say it never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I think...
Did you have the confidence that if we left it as sky, we would have been able to achieve either way? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. Well, all right. I believe, as corny as it sounds, I believe in you, and I believed in your vision. So I felt like I believed in you. That's probably the best way to put it. And as corny as that sounds, that's just the honest truth.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if I'm doing my job right, I'm kind of in the weeds.
Yeah.
Dealing with stuff on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing my job right. So I would say that my initial thought was, okay, he's not happy. Is he unhappy with the job I'm doing? What do I need to do to try to, improve that? Because that's my natural personality, is I want to make sure that I can provide value. And I feel like if I'm not providing value, then I might get a little frustrated, not anybody else other than myself, because I want to be better. I want to improve. So that was probably the initial thought. And then just trying to figure out what you were going through and what your thought process was. And obviously that's when we went to ACA and all those other conferences, and we talked about that already. But so no, I would say that I would say that I never thought it'd be too much work. We don't shy away from work.
I was gonna say,
we don't shy away from work. So that was never a thought process, and I believed in you, so I thought we could still do it regardless. I think looking back, obviously it would have been cost prohibitive to continue down that path.
Yeah. Just
the way that PPC and different things are. So
yeah.
But that's definitely, I was glad when you had your realization.
Yeah. It's hard to believe in somebody when they lose their belief and direction. And you were probably very happy when I found direction again. Absolutely. Where it could be like, but yeah, it's funny.
Because the model works better. It works that way.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
And that's what, when we got to that point, probably April of last year, it was really easy to jump on board and move forward with that vision.
It is so hard to try and give an environment to motivate people to want to collectively work together and build a culture, right? Because that's ultimately like we're building a culture, we're building people, we're trying to get. Ty and I talked about this a lot, but it's that aspect of the individual growth. You and I have been talking about that with location managers all the time, but it's that individual growth. It's hard to give people an environment for growth when I'm not sure of where that's going. So definitely redefining that dream and re-energizing the direction that we're heading and all that. I'm very confident in that now and will be for a long time. So I don't think it's every few years we need to rebrand just to shake things up.
Call mom.
It's not gonna happen. We're set on this one, and it feels right this time. So just thank you for navigating with me that whole time.
Anytime.
So you were there with me and had a instrumental hand in developing the purpose and pillars. You obviously, we've talked about this a lot, but maybe share a comparison of how it was managing Sky's core values versus Dad's pillars.
I think Sky's core values were ambiguous, and maybe intentionally so at the time when they were originally created.
Yeah, they were cop out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain that well because people can interpret that in different ways. Do the right thing sounds really good, but it's hard to what's right for one person might not be right for the next person. So it was I would say them and we would recite them, and it was very easy to remember. But in reality, we struggled every single quarter when we would try to recognize people for demonstrating those core values. We struggled with that. It shouldn't have been that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult to say, do the right thing. Give me an example of a time that somebody's done the right thing. There's countless examples that we could do that. But why was it so difficult to pinpoint that? And at the end of the day, it sounded good, but I don't think it was the organization that we were trying to build. We weren't doing a very good job of explaining to our team what we were wanting to be and who we were wanting to be. I had this conversation last week at the dealer meeting. The rebrand was powerful, obviously, from a customer perspective, from advertising, all those things, the things that people recognize. But I think the thing that's been equally as powerful is the ability that we have had as an organization to better define ourselves to our own team members, our own employees, to where they can better understand what we're trying to accomplish. So when we sit down and we talk about it, we started with our mission statement, our purpose statement. We started with that, and then we looked at what are the individual parts of that purpose statement, and serving like family. That's critical. It doesn't work. None of this works if we don't have that type of servant heart to our customer base. And if we don't have the focus on small things creating big impacts, small things like our uniforms and our trucks and our tools and all those things that are small, how we greet our customers. If those things don't matter to us, they're not going to matter to our employees. And if they don't matter to our employees, then we're never going to set that experience to our customer that they're expecting, right? Yeah. And fostering communication obviously is critical. If we don't have an environment where we're fostering communication amongst our team and we're sharing these values, then none of this works. It doesn't work if the people at the top know what all these things are, and then everybody doing the actual work, the face of the organization, they don't understand what that is. And cultivating curiosity, that's critical. That's critical with our company and who we are. That's why we invest so much in our Dad U program. That's critical for us. We want to be an organization where we have the best technicians, the best installers from a technical side as well as a communication side. And then we got to keep it fun. I mean, our brand is fun. It's cheeky. I had a conversation. A lot of our stuff is irreverent from a business perspective, and some people aren't going to like that. But it's us, and it's who we are as an organization. And whether you like it or not, we are who we are, and we're telling everybody who we are. And we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. We're not going to be everybody's employer of choice. But we're the people that we are. They're going to love us, they're going to stand behind us, and they're going to be loyal to who we are, our customer base and our employees, because we're defining those things better than we were in the past. In the past, we were just Sky. We're going to give you ass.
It honestly, it makes me cringe when I think back to like some of my like I used to give speeches where you've heard me say it. I don't know if you ever said it, but it's that if I have to explain what these mean to you, you're not a fit for this organization.
You told me that in my first interview.
Yeah, it's like, it's now like when I think back to that, it is so cringeworthy that I did that because again, it's a cop out, right? It's not who I am. I was just trying to think of a way to mask what was a brand that didn't fit. And again, now having truly defined what it is that we're trying to portray, not necessarily outwardly, but to each other, right? And if we act that way internally to each other, it will represent serving like family externally, right?
I think authenticity with the brand is key. We talk about that with our messaging to our customers, but also our messaging to our employees. And I think we're authentic now.
Yeah.
We are who we are.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that earlier today in L10 with regard to complaints. It's like, well, thank you. Like, not necessarily complaints on our service, but just complaints on the brand in general, or, call dad, no thank you. It's like, well, good luck. We appreciate the comment.
Yeah.
Like, just keeping with that, who we are. Don't change who we are for the people that don't like us, right? Which one, is there one, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, but is there one that resonates the most personally to you?
I think it's small acts, big impacts.
Yeah.
And I think the reason being is there's so many times we all want to skip those small things.
Yeah.
In our world, we have lots of meetings, right? And we could look at it, even the small things in our meetings that make an impact and how we conduct those meetings. But even from a installer perspective, how they introduce themselves to our customers. As silly and as small as that seems, it all adds up into being the experience they have with our organization. Yeah. So, and I mean, we could go through a litany of different things when it comes to small acts, but I think that's the one that resonates with me the most, because that's the thing that almost all companies skip. They always just want to skip the small stuff, and the small stuff is what turns into big stuff.
Yeah. It's, you definitely apply that attention to detail aspect, right? But it's also a care, right? You got to care to be able to notice those things or take the time to, focus on them. So anything, so you and I are going to do a ton of these, but anything we didn't cover today that you want to get out there in the ethos?
No, I appreciate you doing this. I think it's just critical to make sure that we are communicating with our team and they understand our heart, because I think sometimes it can be really difficult when we're in Charlotte and you're a tech and you're driving down the road in Asheville or Charleston, whatever it is, and you hear different little things, and sometimes it's good just to hear it from the visionary himself and the integrator and HR and all those other individuals that we're going to be talking to for the next indefinite future. Making sure that we're doing that on a consistent basis, I think is going to be huge to make sure that our team just understands what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And look, you and I have this conversation all the time about town halls. I wish we could do them more often.
Sure.
Right. But the unfortunate reality of running a multi-state business, schedules become very complicated. And part of this is to try and engage on a more regular and consistent basis with all locations and all individuals, right? Because like we started this conversation off, we would not have achieved Dealer of the Year. We would not have achieved highest growth in the Southeast.
Top Douglas.
Don't forget
Top
Douglas.
Don't forget that.
And don't forget the President's Award.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to get them to print something out for us. But we wouldn't have achieved any of that stuff without the team. So
Sure.
having a platform to be able to thank and also tie people into that, because I so wish that there were a few individuals there that have over the years expressed to me like, man, I wish people knew who we were.
Yeah.
When I was always like preaching that stay under the radar mentality.
Not anymore.
But not anymore.
Anymore.
What you will feel this summer from not just market but competitors, all that stuff, get excited because it's a pretty cool feeling.
Be the best.
Yeah.
To be the best.
Really is,
Yeah.
to have that target, right? All right. Well, look, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. A lot more of these to come. Thank you for sharing your background. I know you've come through a lot, and we've had a lot of fun over the years, but we've got a lot more work ahead of us and a lot more to do.
Yep.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. See you.
See you. Did you hear the cheesy weather forecast? Rain with a light breeze.
Where do people learn to make ice cream? At Sunday school.
What is Jay-Z's favorite cheese?
No idea.
Beyonce.
Mine too. How do dogs lock their doors? With a corgi.
Did you hear about the cheese that had deja vu?
Mm-mm.
It thought it'd seen this all before.
A lot of cheese jokes.
This is I'm working up.
Okay.
Just you wait.
Speaking of cheese, why are bodybuilders so good at making cheese? Because they have great calves.
All right, this one was a special one for you.
Okay.
Why did Lewis Hamilton have too much cheese?
Don't know.
Oh, after all that setup, you didn't get it?
Mm-mm.
Because he won the Grand Prix.
Oh,
no. All right. That's all I got. It's like there's so many cheese jokes in here.
A lot of cheese jokes.
How many cheese jokes
Well, you can never have too many cheese jokes.
can we get into here?
Never.